It's eating the right food, it's movement, it's hydrate, it's everything. But we can't do all the things for our physical body and then ignore everything that creates the different sensations, the tension and the tightness and the restriction and in our body, when most of that is coming from the way that we think.
Hi, I'm Emily, and this is the Wholesome Wave podcast. These conversations are to inspire emotional wellness, healing, and growth, because the change you create in yourself ripples outwards, transforming those around you and the generations to come. So today I'm talking about a topic that really got my attention about 6 years ago, and that's emotional anatomy. Now, this is essentially learning to understand the language of the body and how our soul communicates with us through our physical body with sensations and symptoms. And it's what really drew me to study Root Cause Practice Program by Tracy Stevens. And it's where I met the beautiful Linda Garvin, who is with me today. And it's a topic that resonated with Linda too. So much so that she has been teaching emotional anatomy course for Tracy, and she is, like me, so passionate about this. But Linda's journey began far from the world of energetics. She qualified as a toxicologist and spent 20 years working for a multinational pharmaceutical company. Now, I don't want to give you too much more of an introduction to Linda because I want to just dive straight in and hear it from her. So, Linda, welcome. Now,
Thank you, Emily.
you started working in the pharmaceutical industry and now you don't. And that's
Yeah.
quite a big leap. So, why don't you start telling listeners what you do now and then sort of share a bit about your story as you made the move away from that pharmaceutical world and like what happened and how did you end up where you are today?
Yeah, I know it's rare, isn't it, that we find somebody who moves from the scientific world into the more energetic, invisible realm of work. And that's where I started with this whole journey, was with energy work with people. And I guess that came about because I encountered a pretty major illness myself. So I had been working pharmaceuticals, multinational business, production manager, over 120 staff reporting to me, and 24/7 operation, huge responsibility. And it's it's like we always say, and all of a sudden my my back caved, or all of a sudden I, couldn't leave the house. And that's exactly what happened with me. All of a sudden I experienced my very first panic attack, when I was training at the gym, which I was doing routinely. And for those people who have never experienced a panic attack, it is one of the most profoundly scariest events that I've ever had to encounter. And it frightened me so much that I ended up being almost paralyzed afterwards in fear of having another one. And bit by bit, my world became smaller and smaller. I couldn't, I just associated going anywhere with the potential of having a panic attack. I struggled to leave my house for almost 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, which was really, really difficult. Um, so that was my first illness, from work, and I realized that something was really amiss, but I didn't know what it was. And in my desperation to try to find something that would fix me, um, I, I tried everything, but I discovered Reiki, and I found it really, really beneficial just to help calm my mind, calm my body. It's so rare in this world that we take any time when we're doing nothing. And I mean doing nothing because we're always on a phone, we're always looking at a screen or reading a book. Even when we think we're resting, we're not really resting. We're just not moving, but we're still engaged. So I found that really beneficial to really just stop everything. And then I trained in Reiki because I wanted to be able to do it on myself with the hope that I would return to my job. And needless to say, I discovered this whole new world existed out there and left the pharmaceutical business entirely and set up my own business in the whole energetic work, which was Reiki, crystals, bioenergy, and through all the different training, I discovered that when I held up a pendulum, it would just start moving. And it was acting like a dowsing rod. I don't know if you have things like, yeah. So it was like a dowsing rod. When I held it over
Maybe you
people's,
can just explain that for people.
yeah. So it's like anything, if you imagine a coin at the end of a string or a chain, and when I hold it over somebody's body, the coin and the chain will start moving either anti-clockwise or clockwise, depending on whether the person needs to have energy cleansed from their system that may be stuck or not flowing. And then it moves in a clockwise direction when the body needs charge, for example, if it's drained. So I just discovered this gift and it felt like I had always had that pendulum in my hand. It just felt a part of me. Um, and that's how I kind of ended up in the energetic realm. But I guess as a toxicologist, my interest was always in forensics. That was kind of what drew me to it. It was always I was the person that always asked the whys. I wanted the evidence. I wanted to know the story behind, just the facts. And I think that's what drew me to the emotional anatomy aspect of of the work that we have both studied with Tracy, which is if somebody has an illness, why that illness? Why the right arm and not the left arm, or why the lower back and not the neck? I wanted to understand more and more about it. Um, yeah, and I just became more and more curious. So this all happened in my 40s, that I wasn't young. It's a time I think maybe when a lot of women are starting to sit back, maybe their kids are growing up, their responsibilities are lifting a little bit, and suddenly they remember themselves and they suddenly realize that maybe they're not as happy as they thought they were, or there's something else. I think everybody that I've spoken to has this sense of this. It's like a nudge. It's like your heart is just being pulled towards something, and you don't even know what it is, but you just know that there's more. So yeah, I just studied and kept adding more and more things to my toolbox of stuff. Yeah, so now I do energetic work with people in person, and I also am able to do that remotely. So like this, I can have a Zoom, I can connect with their energy, same way that we can connect here and hear each other and see each other. And I also do the root cause sessions. Yeah, and I often end up just combining everything into whatever needs to flow to to help whoever I'm happen to be working with, just so that they can feel safe and seen and heard and witnessed in a compassionate, kind way. Yeah.
I love this, Linda, and I resonate so deeply with the wanting to know why. In fact, when I was young, I loved a good crime story and always not wanted to know why and why would this happen and why would this person have done this? And it's funny, I sort of think of myself now as a bit of a detective of the body rather than detective of crime. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm working with people and I feel that energy that's, maybe stuck in their legs, I'm immediately the first question I'm asking myself is why would their body hold energy in their legs? For example, I'm trying to imagine, I imagine this body as if it's holding energy somewhere, it's trying to reinforce something. I see it as almost like it's building scaffolding. Why is it building scaffolding around the legs? Is it because this person feels that they need to be stronger? Is it that they need to, you know, they're finding it hard to stand upright? I just go through this conversation in my mind, that often comes out of nowhere. It's what we kind of call intuition, isn't it? It's like these sentences will just appear in my mind, and when I say them to the client, is there an issue with your legs? They might say, "Oh yeah, my right leg is hurting me a bit," and what's going on for you right now? And we'll eventually uncover that maybe they're under a lot of pressure, or they're feeling under pressure to do something that they don't want to do. So to bend or yield, for example. Yeah, so it's incredible work.
it is. And but I'm curious, like leaving the pharmaceutical world, what did your colleagues make of this transition? Like what kind of feedback did you get?
Well, I mean, I got a lot of "you're crazy," you know, you've worked your whole life to get to where you are right now. Um, why would you throw all that away? Um, and I guess that would make sense to be, you've studied for 5 years in college, and then you've worked for over 20 years in this industry to, climb the ranks. Um, But I didn't see it that way. I kind of saw it as, well, do I want to still be here in another 25 years? I kind of thought like, yeah, I don't want to be here. This is not what I want to do for the next 25 years. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do something that made a bigger impact with people. And I wanted to do something that I could use my life experience, I guess, to to share, and help other people not feel so alone.
And so
I,
I'm
I think when
assuming
people, yeah.
the pharmaceuticals didn't bring you the support that you needed with these panic attacks.
No, I ended up being fired, um, after working there for my entire career. From Yeah, my whole career was there for 20 years, and um, when I couldn't go back to work, I was told that I was faking my illness, and I was dismissed.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. Which which at the time was really traumatic, given that I was already in a highly traumatized place with my nervous system, with experience and panic attacks, and not being able to leave the house. I then realized, now, well, I'm not going to get a reference. So how do I get another job? Um, I had to leave where I lived because I couldn't afford to stay there anymore. I was divorced. I had two kids to support, with no income. I was sick. Um, so at the time, it literally felt like who I was, my entire identity just crumbled to the ground. Because who was I now? I wasn't this working person. The community I lived in, I had to leave. My friends who all lived there, I had to leave. Um, in a way, sometimes, like, I do look back now and realize that I can't say I would never, but it would have been really difficult to actually walk away from that job that has, the pension, the healthcare, all the perks that corporate jobs have. but it's the best thing that ever happened to me because we use so many beliefs. I can't leave that job because how will I be able to pay the rent? I can't leave that job because how will I feed the kids? I can't leave, all of these things that we tell ourselves. And when they're all just taken away, actually, we find gifts and strengths and determination and creativity within ourselves that we never knew existed to build a completely different life. And that is really empowering.
Well, it sounds like you were, something in your soul was getting this nudge and you
Yeah.
weren't listening to it.
Okay.
And then the classic, when you can't say no yourself, your body will say it for you.
Yeah.
And hence these panic attacks arrived and forced you into this position. And I
Yeah.
guess that's really the essence of what emotional anatomy is, isn't it? It's
Well, it is.
understanding
My
what,
body had given me so many messages, Emily, and I just ignored them. You know, like waking up, feeling nauseous, going into work within an hour, my clothes would be wet almost with sweat. Um, working 10-hour, 11-hour days, rushing home, trying to look after two kids, and then as soon as they went to bed, I was back on my laptop for another 3 or 4 hours. That was the norm. That was what was expected. Um, and not just in the company where I was. I mean, that the more I talk to people, that seems to become what's expected of everybody because we have devices and we're expected to be available all the time. My body gave me so many messages. And in the end, it just literally put a door right in front of me and said, no exit,
oh
find
yeah, they
another
say,
door.
don't they say the universe will drop you a feather, and if you don't notice that, it might drop you a stone, and if you still don't notice that, it's going to
Yeah,
drop the boulder, and literally you cannot not
yeah,
take
you
notice.
know. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to say it was easy, building a new business, especially in this kind of work. It's hard because there are still a lot of people that are so skeptical about it. Um, you know, I think a lot of people find it reassuring that I have the science background, because I do have knowledge of the physical body. Um, but I think the biggest reason why people probably come to me is that because they saw how it changed my life. They saw, how energetic work and how just having conversations with people who understood what I was going through was profoundly healing. Because we all think that we're the only one that feels the way that we do, and we're not.
And I guess what I see a lot of is people at the end of the road, they have tried all the pharmaceutical route. They want an answer for what's happening to them, whether it be their sore shoulder or their cancer or their autoimmune disease. And nothing in the pharmaceutical world is working. And so it's only then that they go, okay, well, maybe I give this a go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my clients are either on their first port of call or on their last port of call. That's
Yeah.
what I like. I either get the people who absolutely believe in this work, or I get the ones that say, I've tried everything else. I've nothing to lose here, is kind of what they say. Um, and I believe that they can both work together. I think there is absolutely a place for Western medicine. Um, but we are, I think that we aren't seeing the full picture for just treating the physical body.
Mm.
I think we have to start looking at the way that we think, the way that we talk to ourselves, the pressure that we put ourselves under, and the beliefs that we hold, the things that stop us from trying new things, the things that stop us from following our heart, the way that we live our lives so often to keep other people happy.
And
And
all of those things, like you said, are the invisible, right?
they are the invisible.
And our world is so material. Like if I can't see it or touch it, then it can't be true. And yet we all understand that Wi-Fi works and that,
This is it, yeah. And X-rays work, and MRIs work, and CAT scans, and they're all used in, the medical field. Um, and why you can't see? It's just there's a machine that produces an image of that X-ray or that MRI. I can draw down the image of what I'm seeing or feeling when I'm working with somebody energetically. And it's fascinating because it always tells a story. You know, you hear people that say, well, I tried energy healing and it didn't work, so it's dismissed. A lot of people have tried Western medicine for different things and it hasn't worked. But that doesn't mean you stop trying both of those things for other issues, or you try a mix of those things, or you tweak it a little bit to work for you. I believe that we don't believe in ourselves enough, in our own ability to heal. You know, like when I think about the body, the physical body, and how it functions, even imagine like this cell divides inside this woman's womb until it turns into this little person, and then it's brought out into the world and it grows and grows and grows physically and emotionally and spiritually. And the complexity of all of that, the complexity of, how our emotions impact our digestive system, our sleep, headaches, just the basics, breathing, heart pumping, digesting food, sweating, swallowing, seeing, everything. And then to think that we don't have the ability to repair, I just think our system is so complex. Of course, we have to have the ability to repair.
yeah, you bring such an interesting point because when we say, if we have a belief that this is not going to work, it's like that placebo nocebo
Yeah,
thing. And we know that we can take a sugar pill, and if we're told it's a wonder drug, it's probably going to make us a whole lot better.
yeah,
And yet, so if we go into the energy work thinking this is not going to work, this is not going to work, this is not going to work, that's probably not going to work.
yeah, yeah. If we go into any situation expecting the worst, it's we're kind of going in with that low vibration of energy. I mean, that becomes a person's baseline. Like, what's your baseline in this life? It's not just, I think Tracy says that actually how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Mm.
Are you a glass half full or glass half empty? I'm so bloody grateful to have a glass. I don't care how full or empty it is, I can refill it. If I have a glass, I can top it up. Um, so a lot of it is just how much do you believe in yourself and how much do you believe in the universe that we are capable of so much more than we think we are.
We are, we most definitely are. So let's talk a little bit more about emotional anatomy.
Yeah.
And can you define what it means to you? Hi, Wholesome Wave listeners, Emily here. If this conversation is sparking curiosity and you're wanting to understand what your body might be communicating, I've created a free body pain self-inquiry guide just for you. It explores the 7 most common areas where pain shows up and offers gentle self-reflection questions to help you tune into what may be out of alignment in your life. Simply creating space for awareness to land could be the key that unlocks what's blocked and allows your energy to flow more freely again. You can grab it using the link in the show notes or visit www.thewholesomewave.com/bodypain. Your body already knows. My guide helps you hear what it's saying.
I see it as this beautiful symbolic way that the body sends us messages where we are out of alignment or out of balance in some way, be that our thoughts or emotions or physically. Um, so I see it as, I guess, I kind of see the body as like like it's like a house, and you've got all of this electricity running around, and you've got all of this water running around. It's kind of like your electrics and your plumbing and everything. And if everything flows right, everything works and it's great and we've no problems. But say if one of those pipes gets a little bit blocked, then everything starts to back up behind that. And everything in front of that also then starts to lack. So there's this huge problem. And that's how I see the issues with energetic flow. It's the same thing. It's the same thing as if one of your fuses blow and suddenly half your electrics in your house work and half don't. And to me, it's, well, the body will send you a message. It will send you a message with an ache or a pain. Something will draw you to that point in your body to say, there's a problem here. Things aren't flowing the way that they should be. And then we look at, well, whereabouts in the body is that? And if we look at each part of the body, we don't need to be doctors to do that. It's literally, so say for example, if I had a pain in my wrist, well, what does my wrist do? If I just look at my wrist and look at, well, all of the movement. So my hands, if I look at my hands and the way that they move, they're expressive. Like so many people talk with their hands. So it's like, how free are you expressing yourself? Or is there some tension? Are you holding something back? Is there a tightness or a rigidity around why you're not expressing yourself, for example? The other thing that comes to mind, there are so many sayings. We could talk about emotional anatomy forever, but we often hear those old expressions that are so wise with somebody carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. Um, it's those we kind of start to look at. We start to look at each part of the body. What way should it move? And why is the pain there? And what movement is it restricting? And then it's like, well, what are the thoughts behind that? So for example, with that wrist one, if there's a tightness in their wrist and they're not able to move their wrist properly, that could be because they don't actually want to do what they're doing. So they may be in a job that you hear a lot of people who have repetitive strain injury, they're in a job that doesn't bring them any joy or satisfaction. So the body is trying to highlight this to them. You're doing this work that is not bringing you any joy. We tune out of that. We just become numb to that lack of joy, and our body is showing us this. This is painful. This is painful for your heart not to have any joy in your work. You need to do. So I'm going to stop you from doing this work so that you're forced to find something else that might bring you joy.
It's
That's
back to
kind of
the
the best
if you don't
example.
say, well, it's back to the if you don't say no, I'm going to make it too sore for you to work this mouse in this
Yeah,
job that you don't like, right?
yeah, yeah. And there are so many examples of that. So, you know, I almost, when somebody's walking up to my door and they have a stooped posture, I nearly always know they're going to be a carer because they literally have that huge responsibility and burden of looking after somebody else, and they get lost in the process, you know. And that's another point, Emily, is that there are so many feelings that people feel that they can't express. It's like I can love my parent and still find it really difficult to care for them. You know, I can love my children, but still find it really difficult to be a single parent and to be financially responsible for them. It's almost like we're not allowed to voice any of those negative thoughts that we have. They're only thoughts.
And it's then those thoughts that back up our shoulders and bring that tightness or that tension, which
Yeah,
then we if we start to understand the language of the body, we realize, hang on, I need to put down some of this responsibility. I need
yeah,
to at least start to express and unload it. So, as you're saying, we can't necessarily not suddenly not have our children to look after or our parent or whoever. However, if we communicate and express what a burden that is for us, we're actually lightening that load.
yeah. Can we ask for help? You know, a, a lot of it comes back to these old patterns that we were raised with. A lot of the time, it's those people who take on so much responsibility are people pleasers. They never learned to do anything for themselves. Their whole identity is tied up in, I need to do something so that other people like me, or I need to do something to be of value. Like, I don't have any value by just being here. I have to do something or give something. And it's really difficult to see thoughts like that when they've been there for your whole life because you just assume that everybody else thinks the same way. And that's the only way to be.
Well, they're in our blind spot, right?
They're the
And
blind spots.
and that's exactly what we do in one of our root cause sessions is try and highlight that blind spot to people. And like you said, there are all these metaphors and the words that we use, if we actually are able to listen to ourselves, which can be really hard, but the person usually says it in the language that they're speaking. And like you, I love all these metaphors, like to dip your toes in.
Yeah.
And that's probably we're nervous of taking that step, to bend over backwards, to have a
Yeah.
rubber arm, to feel weak at the knees, or to bite my tongue.
Yeah. Yeah. So many of them, Emily, so many of them. And the blind spots, even when we're fully trained and qualified and certified, I still can't see my blind spots. I still have to work with somebody else to get a full perspective on the bits that I can't see. And that's why self healing, you can do a lot, but you can't see your blind spots. I mean, people call that shadow work, but you can't see what's in the shadows until somebody shines a light on it. It's it's not visible.
So, Linda, you, like me, are this curious person, and we always want to make sure we take in all the information and know everything about everything. And during the root cause practice program, I took screeds and screeds of notes and I made sure I knew exactly what was going on and what meant this. And I think you joke about how during the course, if you had been pregnant, the baby would have thought that Tracy was your mother because it heard her voice so much.
Literally, it was 24/7 on in my car, in my house. Yeah. And I wrote down every single word she said, every single word.
And what I've sort of come to understand now is that we crave this information, right? And we think that knowing everything is going to give us the answer, which is why, I wrote down everything. I wanted to know it all. I wanted to know, why is this, that? However, what I'm really deeply understanding now is it's not the knowing, it's the being
Yeah.
and the receiving. And I guess this is what a session is really about. It's about getting away from that logical mind, that conscious mind, and tapping into the subconscious.
Yeah. It's, the learning, the reading, the courses, the writing, it's all great, but it's all in your head. It's still all in your head. Um, it's like buying a book about how to run and then downloading the app about how to run and talking to your friends about how to run and watching all the YouTube stuff about how to run, but you're not going to learn how to run until you actually move out the door and start doing it, start running. It's the same thing. And the reading and the learning and everything, like I can realize, I look back now and I realize that that was from a place of fear. That was from a place of, I was trying to build this security around myself. If I have all the information, then I'll be good enough. If somebody, like, what if somebody asks me something and I don't have the answer? That meant I was a failure. So even looking at that, it's like, well, what beliefs are we thinking about why I have to know everything and why I have to learn everything? And what it actually comes back to, just like with the sessions, is trust. Can you sit and have a conversation with somebody in this therapeutic environment where you get to lead, where you don't have to talk about your past, you don't have to talk about anything that you don't want to talk about, you just have to start tuning into your body and start having a conversation with your body instead of trying to rationalize everything in your head. And that's the being. That is the that is the ultimate way of being present, of mindfulness, of living in the moment, is what am I feeling right now in this moment? And as I have a conversation, how are the sensations in my body changing depending on what I'm talking about? And why are they changing depending on what I'm talking about or thinking about? So instead of trying to think about why I'm feeling a certain way, it's why am I feeling a certain way because of what I'm thinking about? It's almost flipping it on its head, isn't it? It's like, can I start listening to my body more than this constant chatter? Because my body is really, really wise and it has something really important to say, but I have to be quiet to hear it. And I have to trust that what it's telling me is for my good. Our bodies are never trying to make us sick, they're always trying to help us to come back into balance and wellness.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I always think to myself, you know, that we've got to trust, like you said earlier, that our bodies know how to heal. That is the fundamental way of the body. If you get a cut, you don't you don't have to do anything. It'll just start healing that cut. And then after a few days, depending on how bad the cut is, but if it's
Yeah.
just a paper cut, after a few
Mm.
days, the paper cut's gone, right? And you haven't had to do anything or take anything and so it's trusting that even with a more serious problem, the body is always trying to move towards healing. It has the ability to heal. And I think as we get more serious things, we forget that the body is wanting to move towards healing. And we think, oh gosh, I must need to get help from outside of myself. Whereas, can I just trust that my body knows what to do if I
Yeah.
give it the right conditions? So if I give it that space, if I take away those thoughts that are harming it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like it's it's eating the right food, it's movement, it's hydrate, it's everything. But we can't do all the things for our physical body and then ignore everything that creates the different sensations, the tension and the tightness and the restriction and in our body, when most of that is coming from the way that we think.
Mm. Yeah, it's the whole environment, which
Yeah.
includes those thoughts and those things we're doing that maybe we
Yeah.
don't want to be doing.
Yeah. And we're just afraid of what that means.
Mm. And so do you want to just talk us through like how a session looks? Like let's say somebody's coming with a sore shoulder because shoulders are a real common one.
Yeah. I think the first kind of usually the person will just tell me a little bit about, what's why they're here. It's my shoulder and it's like I have a sore shoulder or I have pain in my shoulder. And usually I would ask them then to kind of tune in. Can you tune into that sensation that's in your shoulder? Um, and what words would you use to describe it? And this is where it gets really interesting because how many of us, say, I have pain in my shoulder. Oh, that's awful. Here, take some pain medication. What's the what is the pain? What's the pain like? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Is it throbbing? Is it aching? Is it stabbing? Is it deep? Does it is it tender? What does it what does it restrict you from doing? What helps it? So what does it need to feel better? Does it need heat? Does it need cold? Does it need massage? Does it just need not to be touched? Does it need rest? They're all symbolic of what the person needs. And then we get into even deeper than that if the person is willing to go, even visualizing if they were to tune into that sensation in their body, you know, I often ask them if you were to tune into that until you could draw it on paper, what would it look like? And you might hear somebody saying, oh, it could be like a jagged shape, so it's something that's really hard and jagged. And then we try to work with that even, you know, is there a way that we can soften it? And the beautiful part about all of just that simple conversation is that if I was to say, oh, that pain in your shoulder is anger, I'm not saying it is anger, it could be anything, it could be a million different things. But people don't want to necessarily talk about an emotion and what that emotion means. But if we just tune into a sensation, it doesn't have any meaning. It's not good or bad. It's just a sensation. And this is where we come up with this, can you sit with your emotions? Can you sit with your feelings? Can you just sit and tune into the sensation in your body and become curious about it? And when we do that, we often unconsciously just soften our bodies. And that alone, it's like it's like that energy that's sitting there is kind of going, ah, finally. You see me now. You're paying attention. You're starting to connect in with this pain. And a lot of the time, the client is able to reduce that sensation or change it or shift it or move it in some way, or the pain eases. And
And
then it
this,
just, no, sorry.
no, I was going to say, and this is when that message can start to land, right?
Yeah. And then I just talked to them about, awareness. Notice when this pain comes back. What are you thinking about, or what are you doing at that particular moment? You're looking for patterns, For some people, they come with pain that they've had for decades and decades. Um, and then we're looking at similar kind of questions, but we want to go deeper. Then we want to go, well, when did this pain first start? What was going on in your life at that time? There's usually some underlying belief, you know, that could have been a situation where a young child suddenly became responsible for looking after a younger sibling, or a parent maybe left the house or the home and this child had extra responsibilities. You know, energy does have a weight. I know people find that really difficult to get their heads around, but when you're holding energy in a certain part of your body, you feel it. It's held there, and it's held there because your body is trying to tell you, I'm not meant to be here. I'm out of balance because I've too much on this side and it's not the same as that side. Yeah.
And that's so interesting because the number one thing I get at the end of a session is, oh wow, I feel so much lighter.
Yeah.
And so it comes back to that energy is dense and heavy, and we feel it and it weighs us down. And when we can give it that space to hear the message, to unblock it a little bit, then our body just feels lighter.
Yeah. It does. Of course it does, because we're clearing out. It's like carrying a bag of stones around inside your body, all this energy that was stuck there, and trying to just put down those rocks one at a time through working with your body and mind. And of course you feel lighter. People often say as well, they feel that they have more clarity, and they have more clarity because there's more space. you know we're not up to full capacity with, there's no space. I can't think clearly. You hear people saying that my head, here's it, like my head is spinning, and that's literally your thoughts. You're going around and around in your head and thoughts. You're creating that circular energy where the energy is literally spinning in your head. And it's really hard to have clarity when you're sitting in the middle of a snowball, so to speak, those balls that you shake that are full of snow. Yeah, you just need to just sit and let everything try to settle.
And that makes me think of such a common symptom as a headache. And I know that for most people, that would be, oh, quick, get the Panadol. I've got a headache. I need to get rid of it. And actually, yes, sure, the Panadol might get rid of the headache, but we're missing the message, right? And we
Yeah,
need, if we want to start listening to our body, we need to accept the sensation and understand what it's trying to say to us and sit with it. And that can be really hard.
yeah, it can be
However,
really hard.
taking that drug or whatever it is to mask the sensation is actually really just covering it up, and it's not getting to the root of why has this come along.
Yeah, it's just putting a sticky plaster on it, really, isn't it? It's putting a sticky plaster on a big gaping hole. Um,
And like
yeah,
why are my thoughts spinning out of control?
why are my thoughts spinning out of control? Why is my head aching? What is it aching from? Is it? Is it a pressure? Does it feel like somebody's putting my head in a vice? And all of the things that you're thinking about, are they past based? Are they future based? Do you have any control over them? You know, are you just going around in circles with the same thing over and over? Are you having these imaginary conversations in your head that may never happen? There's so much thought driven, but also so much information that has to be taken in and processed by the brain. It's what we see, it's what we hear, it's everything that we read and consume. It's never ending. We've never ever had so much information inputted into us all the time. How are we meant to figure out what's healthy and what's not healthy, what's good and what's bad, what I don't need to remember and what just I can pass out? Yeah.
I wonder if you've got any client examples of recent things that people have come to you with.
Um, yeah, I've had a number of clients recently actually who are on either who have been diagnosed with cancer, um some pretty rare and aggressive types of cancer. Um One was actually a medical professional in Europe, which was quite interesting to see somebody who is a surgical background come to the energetic field to look at getting some support. She was getting, a really aggressive chemotherapy treatment. So she was just looking for something to complement that and also to look at maybe why did this illness occur? And, I don't want to go into too many details because it's obviously her personal story. But what what RCP and the whole emotional anatomy and the energetic work brings that may be so badly needed in her life or anybody who's just been diagnosed with a really, really tough diagnosis and maybe is facing a really harsh regime of treatment, is the energetic and the RCP work brings this beautiful softness. It actually, it's about teaching or helping them find a way of softening themselves within. You know, that particular lady, she did 4 sessions with me and went really, really deep as to her beliefs, the beliefs of why she had to work so hard to be recognized, and that came from her culture, her ethnicity, her the fact that her gender, in this really tough environment, she felt like she had to work twice as hard. Um, Also in an environment where, you're not really expressive of your emotions. It is quite harsh. You're seeing a lot of emergency illnesses, deaths. And it was that she was in a space where she could actually talk about how she felt, express how afraid she was. And in that exercise of like tuning in to look for that fear, she also found her strength energetically, and visually. Um, she she discovered a lot of beliefs that she never realized. She discovered how independent she was in that she had to do everything herself. She never asked for help or support, which she learned to do. In a way, the illness forced her. It forced her to sit back and relinquish all control, all independence, receive, rest, all the things that she didn't do for her whole life. Yeah, and I believe she's in remission now. It's stories like that. It's people like that that I meet that I just feel humbled to be able to share space with people who are so brave and courageous. but they're willing to do the work. They're willing to sit back and look at how have my thoughts and behaviors um, and the way that I live my life led to this point, and what can I change so that my life is more balanced in the future. Does
Wow,
that
what a
help?
beautiful story. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it so beautifully illustrates how, this work can work so well with Western medicine because at times the Western medicine can be that wonderful support as we're, finding our feet and, like you say, coming to these realizations about our beliefs. And it's really the energetic work and changing all of that up that's going to support us not to go back to that place of doing whatever we're doing that's out of alignment with ourselves.
Mm,
And
yeah,
so looking at, illness as really this sacred thing that comes along
yeah. And
rather
that's what I
than
was just thinking. Why does it take us to get to that extreme, almost life-changing illness for us to step back and suddenly realize that the things that we thought were so important, the money, the job, the house, the car, whatever it might be, actually, when it comes to that life-altering moment, does that really matter? Or is there a different balance to be found? If only we could reach that point of clarity without having to reach the health crisis or the
ab-
emotional crisis.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it starts with, learning to listen to our body and like starting with the more simple things, like maybe when I get a headache, what am I doing? Or that shoulder, or because I guess once we get into the more serious diseases, we've obviously, well, the message is just bigger, right?
It is, and I guess you're further down that road that you have to try to come back from. The earlier the earlier you notice, the easier it is to come back into alignment. I mean, the more severe the illness or the pain, that means that the more out of balance you are and have been for a long time. It's like a tipping point. We want to kind of try to realign ourselves before we get to that tipping point. Um, yeah, like if there was one thing that I would tell anybody how they can change their lives, the first point to start is to just be kinder to themselves with the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we speak to ourselves. We are so incredibly cruel and harsh, and we're our own biggest critic. And that brings tension and it brings stress to the body. And what would it be like to just be a little bit gentler and softer and kinder with yourself?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. And I know that, at the start of my journey into energetics, my mind had to have this understanding and this answer for everything. And, with emotional anatomy, I would be like, okay, so I've got this condition or this is sore. Now that must mean why. And I often get asked this from friends. I get them saying, oh, I've got a sore shoulder. What does that mean? What does that mean? And I suppose now I feel like I've softened a lot more to not need to have a direct answer and just to be able to listen a bit more and come up with an understanding, come up with an answer myself. And then the emotional anatomy becomes just a bit more of a guide. And so we're landing more in our body and listening to our hearts rather than having that head that's got to be figuring everything out. And so how do we help people move more to listening to their body instead of wanting that answer in their head?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah. I guess from working with energetics as well, is that sometimes we're trying to have, we're trying to create a nice story that has a beginning and a middle and an end, and that we can tie it up in a bow and it'll all be perfect. So we're applying our logical mind to something that is energetic, to something that is always moving. And there isn't always a logical answer. The symptom in the body is it's just a flag. It's like it's like on your circuit board at home. It's like there's a light flashing. Like it's telling you there's something wrong, but it's going to take a bit more investigative work to figure out what that is. But ultimately, the way I see it is that when we're born, we are born perfect. We are born with this beautiful energy that our soul contains, that our heart contains, that is so unique and individual to us. And as we move through life, we learn that we have to speak a certain way, act a certain way, do certain things, keep other people happy, what's expected of us. So we start to morph and mold and blend and change as we wander through life. And as we do that, the way I see it is that it's like we have this string tied to our heart. And the further away from the our authenticity or this essence, the soul energy, it's like we're wandering further and further away from our heart. And really, every difficult situation that we encounter in life, regardless of whether that's physical, emotional, relational, whatever, it's always an invitation to try to find our way back to this beautiful energy and essence that we hold within, which has everything that we need, which has courage, strength, love, joy, happiness, everything. We've just wandered so far from it, we've forgotten it's there. So often, if people can just sit with what is the truth in their heart, what does their heart truly want, we will often find what the answer is. If we take away the fear, the expectations, the resentment, the sadness, all of those emotions, and come back to what is it? What is it that I want? Most people just want to feel alive, connected, um, a sense of fulfillment. We're not looking for huge things. We just get lost in the cultural, societal, and familial expectations.
Oh, that's so beautiful, Linda. And yeah, and then it's our body just giving us those messages to go back to the heart. And
Come back to
so,
that.
yeah, our emotional anatomy is really learning the language of what our body is trying to communicate to get us back to the heart.
Yeah, always. To get us back into balance, to get us back into alignment. And alignment is alignment with who you are and why you're here. And what is it that you were born to do and to bring and to receive? You know, nobody was born to be a people pleaser. We were born to experience something for ourselves, and we have to be able to receive to do that.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Linda, where can people find you?
Um, Instagram is probably the biggest one, and all my information is there. So it's Soul Vibration Wellness, um, and on that, then you have my links for booking different sessions if people would like to do that, and it has my email and my contact number and everything like that. Yeah, so it's it's always interesting. It's always worth having a deeper exploration of yourself. I think We deserve to make friends with ourselves. We're with this body for our entire life. We should learn to love it a little bit.
I love that. Yeah, a deeper exploration. And I guess many people find this quite a challenge, quite woo-woo.
Yeah,
And it's just like, just give it a go because it's just this little conversation that might just unlock something for you.
yeah. What have you got to lose, you know? And that's how I discovered it, you know. I was in from that point of just complete and utter desperation. And it turned out to be the most beautiful journey I have ever started and hope to continue for the next 25 to 30 years at least. So, what have you got to lose? What I guess my question always to people is, which may sound a bit challenging, but what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of finding out about yourself? Like, there's nothing to fear. It's you're just getting to know. All of this is about exploring who you are, why you think the way that you think, why you react the way that you react, and how you learned to think and react those ways was as a way to keep yourself safe and protect yourself as a child. And how can that be wrong? Like, there's nothing wrong in any of this. There's nothing bad in any of this.
Well, like just bringing it back to that analogy of the house, there's nothing wrong with the house. It's just that the energy's not flowing through it correctly. And we need to just shift something to make sure that that energy is going around smoothly again.
Yeah, well, it's like your car, isn't it? You bring your car for maintenance check to get the oil and you know, the bulbs and whatever else, air filters and all of that needs to be changed so that it keeps running smoothly. You don't wait for it to break down on the side of the road to kind of go, maybe I should get this checked out. It's the same thing. I have clients who have come to me every 2 to 3 weeks for the last 6 years. They see this as their self-care. This is how they maintain their life balance. I think that's incredible.
It is,
That's the
it's
greatest gift
amazing.
any parent can give their children, isn't it? I am actually going to make sure that I am in the best possible energetic space, physically and emotionally, that I can be so that I have so much more capacity to deal with whatever it is that comes up in my life. I mean, I wish I knew that 30 years ago.
So do I. And that is such a beautiful place to leave things for our listeners. And yeah, give it a go and
Yeah,
be kind to yourself.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Emily.
Oh, thank you, Linda. Thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom. Thanks for listening to the Wholesome Wave podcast. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who could use a little wave of inspiration in their life. If you would like to explore emotional release work more deeply, you can connect with me at thewholesomewave.com. Remember, the healing you create in yourself ripples out to your loved ones and beyond.